Hello everyone, welcome to Gardening TLC and happy October. It is definitely fall here in Northern Illinois, Zone 5, which is where I live. My name is Michelle and today you are at Garden Gab. Garden Gab is where we talk about the garden in the garden. We have a great episode today because not only are we going to answer questions from the previous 2 weeks videos, we have some great submission pictures from the viewers, which are you out there, and later in the video I'll tell you how you can send your pictures in so that you can be part of Garden Gab too. So come with me today and let's get going. We're going to jump right into the video, starting with the landscape installation, the parking lot transformation. That job was a big job, and boy, did my guys do an awesome job. Not only did they do the patio and the pergola and the landscaping, they installed the raised beds, they did the spar dust, all the edging, the rock work, the living wall. I think it turned out so good, and I know the owners were absolutely ecstatic. So let's answer your questions about that video. We got the same question from 3 different people, and it was actually about the garden beds. So Karen Lynn, the 5 Becks, and Krista Peterson all wanted to know, where did I get those raised garden beds? So they were 3x6, 2 feet high, metal garden beds, and I ordered them on Amazon, and they came from a company called Edo's Story. So I put a link down below. If you're interested in that, you can go check them out. These are some pretty morning glories called Grandpa Oct, and they come from Sandy in Northern California, Sacramento, Zone 9. And she writes, I love, love, love gardening. I have become really good at some things, and others I am still learning. And guess what? You're in the same boat as the rest of us, because there are some things that I'm really, really good at too, but there are things I am definitely still learning. This is gorgeous. Only one other question got generated from the video. It came from 2 different people, from Agnes Carboni and Shirley 911. They wanted to know if or how they were going to water everything. Well, just right across that parking lot, that's where their hose spigot was. So it wasn't very far away. A 75-foot hose got them from the building all the way to the fence line. The next video was getting rid of thistle and planting with cardboard. I finished out the end of the bed right here. You can see I got a pretty little milk jug to put in there. We also changed out the bird bath and put in a new topiary. We planted some beautiful plants in here, and then I just talked about different ways that you can get rid of thistle, and then we put cardboard down because I decided to use a smothering technique. I am still in the first blush of love with this topiary. It is a Scotch pine topiary that we put in place of the bird bath. I love this thing. It is so gorgeous. Oh, a lot of you said it makes you think of Dr. Seuss, and that's what we call them. We call them Dr. Seuss shrubs, even though it's a topiary. That's what it makes me think of every time I look at it, and every time I walk by it, I smile. So I'm telling you, for me, it was the right choice. Now, we do have a question that came from Sandra Matthews. She has a question about the tree and how far does it have to be planted from your house so it will not cause foundation issues, or is the root system different than most trees and that they're not so strong and they won't cause a problem? Well, this guy is 10 feet away from my house, which is plenty of room for the roots to grow. I don't think I'm going to have foundational issues. I try to make sure anytime I plant a smaller tree like this, it's at least 10 feet away from the house. Even shrubs, I try to keep 2 to 3 feet away from the house as well, because she's right. I don't want foundational issues. Oh my goodness, look at this beautiful dahlia. This comes from Eileen in southeastern Massachusetts, zone 6B7A. This is her first open bloom of the first dahlia that she's ever planted. She just moved into this house in June, so she was late getting the tubers in the ground. The plants are covered in buds, so I hope more open before the season ends. I'll definitely have to find a different location for these plants next year. I never expected them to get so tall and full. Just gorgeous. She also ordered some bulbs from the Shopify store, and she received them, and she's planting them this weekend. That's a beautiful dahlia. I'm not a big dahlia person. I think they're a lot of work, but when other people plant them, I admire them very much. Our question comes from Rita Monkman. She loves the topiary and she thinks it's in the perfect spot. She was in the process of taking out some plants that had spread, and she didn't want them in the flower bed, and so she was going to move and divide them, but there was ladybugs that seemed to settle down for a long winter nap. She's in zone 3 and she wanted to know, should she wait till spring or should she move them? And you know what? You're in zone 3, which means it's already cold and it's a risk to move them now. I probably would have moved them earlier just so that the roots had a chance to get settled in. I would just cut them back and wait till spring. I love this little Ninebark. Oh, it's so beautiful. I love the dark foliage. We do have a question from Vicki Wilson, and she wants to know if I have any issues with dusty mold on the Ninebark. Well, this is the first Ninebark that I've put in my yard outside of the 2 that I put in the pot. They are bred to be disease resistant, so we're hoping we don't have a problem with that. Yes, I do know that some Ninebarks have an issue with powdery mildew. We're hoping that this one was bred not to. So I don't know yet, but I will find out, and you're gonna find out with me. Check it out. This is my beautiful ginkgo tree. And Sonia Huggins wants to know if it stinks. Well, if you buy a female tree, absolutely. They produce a fruit and it will stink. You need to buy a male tree. That's what this is. So no, mine does not stink. This beautiful red flower is from Diane Hamilton, who lives in Weatherford, Texas, zone 8. And she keeps sending me all these beautiful pictures of plants that I can't grow, but I love to see them. And this is gorgeous. So this is another Texas plant. It's a Texas red star hibiscus. In spite of the name, it's not really native to Texas, but it's sometimes known as swamp hibiscus or swamp mallow. It's native to the swamps and marshes of Alabama, Georgia, and Florida, but they've adopted it in Texas. It does well in their harsh climate. It does want lots and lots of water, so you can't overlove this one. This is gorgeous. I love it. Our questions from Mikey Mopar. How will those plants get water if the cardboard are covering up the roots? That would be my concern. And the water seeps through that cardboard. It breathes through there. They're totally fine. They totally get water. Eventually the cardboard breaks down, but the water goes through. Oh, wow. That's pretty cool looking. I really like that. All right. So this comes from Jenny Patterson. She lives in zone 4A, Northwest Minnesota. She writes, hi there. I absolutely love the Garden Gab with the Impatient Gardener. Oh, I hope you guys got to catch that special edition of Garden Gab that we did last weekend with Erin from the Impatient Gardener. If you didn't get to see it, go check it out. I had a good time with Erin in her garden. All right, right now, this is the best thing in my garden. It's what I call an orb, about 20 inches diameter. And for the past 4 years, she's planted it with the begonias. This is a Santa Cruz begonia, and I believe there are 5 tubers. I have been saving them every year, so they're getting quite large. This is hanging from a tree next to my sidewalk and usually in the shade. The sad part is that she's in zone 4A, so she's already had frost by now. And so that means she's probably already had to pull this down to overwinter it for next year. But that is gorgeous. We got a second question from Mikey Mopar. Will I put any fertilizer in the hole when I plant your shrubs? And the reason I'm asking is because they're planting 6 blue arrow junipers this weekend. All right. I did not fertilize. It's a little late here for me to be pushing growth. I want the roots to get settled, and you could probably use a starter fertilizer, but even then I would do that lightly. I don't want to push growth that doesn't have time to harden off here where I live. The other thing is, unless you're using an organic fertilizer, don't throw the fertilizer in the hole. Synthetic fertilizer is really strong and harsh, and you can burn roots, so always sprinkle that on the top. Organics are not, so you could probably put those in the hole, like a biotone. But that's where I'm at with that. In the video, I talked about different controls that you can use to get rid of thistle, one of them being chemicals. Now, no one control is 100% foolproof all the time. A lot of times you need to use a combination of different controls to get rid of a thug weed in your garden. Now, I'm not advocating any one kind or another. I think you just have to do what's right for you, and that's why I listed all the different choices. But we did get one last question from Mary Palmer, and she lives in zone 5 Maine, and she's been battling with pretty much everything in her garden. She did use a poison, but she wants to know, how long does she have to wait before she can plant behind putting that chemical down? When you're using a chemical, typically there's a pull-out section that has all the instructions attached to whatever chemical you're using. You should read that. In it, it will tell you how long you have to wait in between spraying and the time that you can replant in the area where you sprayed the chemical. This is a systemic, and you're spraying it on the leaves, and what it does is it travels down the stem to the root, and then it kills, supposedly, the plant that you're trying to take out. I did list 3 different chemicals that work at different times of the year that you can use on thistle. It's a busy truck day. They keep going by, so I have to keep turning the camera off. Sorry about that. But you want to make sure that whatever weed it is that you're trying to eradicate with a chemical, that weed is listed on the list of weeds that chemical takes care of. All right, so when you're using glyphosate, which is like a Roundup product, the one thing you want to remember is there are different kinds of Roundup, and some of them that say extended control, it means that they'll last longer and you have to wait longer before you can plant. I've used products that actually only have like a 2-week window, and then you can plant behind it. So find that in the instructions of whatever chemical you're using, and it should be listed in there. The next video was how to plant fall bulbs, and I gave you 10 tips and some pro tips on what to do to be successful to get your bulbs in the ground. Now, a lot of you probably already knew how to do that, but did you know I launched my Shopify page that day? So the Shopify page is going to be a store that's going to be in conjunction with my YouTube channel. It's not going to be the main focus of what I do. It's to complement my channel, and things that I talk about that I love, I'm going to put those on there for sale. Now, most of the time, everything that I'm going to sell is going to be limited run items. The first of which we loaded the proven winner bulbs that were developed by the Netherlands Bulb Company, and they're only available in independent garden centers this year, of which I got some. There are still some left. I think 3 of them are sold out, but there's still some left if you want to get in on that. There's a link right here. You can go check it out. We will be loading more products, and I will be talking about that usually during Garden Gab or a special with a video. We have some Christmas gifts and things coming up, but it's not going to be the main thing that I talk about on my channel. My channel is going to be about gardening. This is to complement my channel. All right, we did get a question though about tulips. Dylan Shumway wants to know if I ever lasagna plant bulbs in a pot. And so for those of you that don't know what that is, it's this. It's layering the bulbs of different sizes in the pot that will come up through each other. Some of them will succession grow and bloom one right after another. And the goal is, when you're doing it, that by the end, you have a little bit of all of them blooming. Some maybe finishing and some just starting, but you layer all the bulbs in a pot. And yeah, I probably can do a video on that. This is a reblooming iris, and it's blooming usually in August or September. And that's very cool to have an iris reblooming that time of year. This comes from the garden of Barb Breivik, and she lives in Michigan in the small town of Dansville, Zone 5B 6A. What a beautiful yellow. Now, this iris name is called Pure as Gold. I might have to find me one of those. Our question comes from Pib Gorn. I'm going to follow these steps to plant tulips this year. Please mention in a future video when it's safe to take the chicken wire out. Is that a cleanup task for after the tulips die back next year? So I bury my chicken wire so I don't mess with digging it back out unless my tulips decline, and then I might pull it out. Now, some people don't bury the chicken wire. They put it on the top of the surface, and when they start to see the tulips come up through that chicken wire, they pull it then, because then I don't think that the squirrels are so interested in the bulbs. I don't pull mine out though. I just leave it. This is a beautiful pink drift rose that comes out of the garden of Linda McKinney. Hi, Linda. I love that you send me a picture every single month of something in your garden. She lives in Michigan Center, Michigan, Zone 4B, and drift roses are really easy to grow, and they're absolutely gorgeous. Our question actually comes from Dottie Briender. 5533, and she said she's had great luck with planting lilies in pots, and she wants to know if she could add daffodils and tulips in with the lilies. I don't know if that would work because lilies actually bloom a lot later than the tulips and the daffodils. You could try it and do that layering in the pot, see if the daffodils and the tulips come up. You probably would have to cut that foliage back though to leave room for the lily foliage to come up behind it, and you'd probably have to treat those as annuals, but you could try it for sure. This is a sweet little woodland garden. I love it. This comes from Mary Spencer. She lives in Zone 7A, Westminster, Maryland. She writes, 2 years ago, she lost 2 really large oaks, and those do definitely provide a lot of shade, but look at what you did. And she writes, I made lemonade from the mess of lemons. This looks fabulous. I love it. Our question comes from Melinda Owens, and she writes, I've never grown a tulip, so she was very happy that I did an instructional video, and I'm glad the videos are helping someone. Her question is, can she grow tulips in pots? And yes, you can. They do great in pots. Hello, Carolyn 8033. She wants to know, when she plants tulip bulbs and I treat them as annuals and I dig them up, Do I replant them again in the fall? No, I just toss them. I just don't go through the trouble of storing and all of that. Although you could do that, you could store them and then replant them in the fall. I don't do it with expensive bulbs. I typically do it with less expensive bulbs, the ones that you can find at the box store where you get the deals, especially when they're like towards the end of the season and they haven't sold them and they put them on sale. That's the ones I do it with. This comes from Celia C66. Isn't this great? She made a pumpkin with succulents. Now, she also used evergreens, which those work really well too. You could probably spray them with wilt stop so they don't dry out, but I like the little sedum flowers. This is really pretty. Now, what's interesting is she said that the pumpkin grew in her compost pile, and then she picked it and then foraged around the yard to get all the things she put on top. How sweet! Angie Quester has a question about whether or not she can move bulbs right now. And yes, you can. You can dig them up and then you can move them where you want to move them. Treat them just like you're planting new bulbs. And there you go. Betsy277 wants to know if I would do a video about planting tulips in a container. I've tried before, but they always seem to rot. Thank you. You know that my very first video that I did on YouTube was about planting bulbs in containers. And so if you want to check that out, I put the link down below. But really the rot part, that really has to do with moisture control where you live. Down Sprig Lane asks, I'm in zone 7, so I'm guessing I need to refrigerate mine, but how long to keep them cold before we plant them? And do we plant them in the spring or after the refrigeration period? Sorry, I've never done this before. It's okay. We love that you asked the questions, and I'm sorry if I wasn't clear about what to do. If you are in zone 7 and 8, you need to refrigerate the bulbs depending on the bulb, and you can Google this, but anywhere from 8 to 16 weeks. It really depends on the bulbs. Most tulip bulbs want 12 weeks, and you put them in the refrigerator. Don't put them in an area that has fruit, because fruit puts off a chemical that can affect the bulbs and make them deteriorate, so you don't want to do that. After they've gone through their chilling period, your ground's not frozen, so you should be able to get them in the ground right away, and then they'll get in the ground, get settled, get their roots growing, and then they'll grow and come up in the spring. Look at all the Halloween decorations. This is so cute. I used to decorate for Halloween all the time when my kids lived at home and they were little. Not so much anymore. Now I just kind of do fall, but I love to look at the Halloween decorations that people do. This is in the garden of Aggie C221. She lives in New Jersey, Garden Zone 7A. She just found my channel, so she's new to it. So welcome. I'm so glad that you are tuning in and joining our community. She said most of her plants aren't looking good, and I guarantee you that's where a lot of people are in their gardens right now. But she says it's the end of the summer, but I love the Halloween decor. It's absolutely fun and festive, and I love it. Our question actually comes from BC6491, and she said, thanks for the tulip tips. They're so beautiful, and I'd love to plant them. She's in zone 6A. Your chicken wire trick is genius to outsmart the squirrels. Yeah, those squirrels, though, they're pretty smart. But any tips for rabbits? Can I surround the tulips with rows of alliums? Well, you could, because alliums kind of are a deterrent to rabbits. They don't like the smell. Or try repellent. Our next video was in Dubuque, Iowa, and we went on a tour of this absolutely fabulous garden. It was called Garden Tour, a garden room, she shed, water, garden art, and layers of planting. I love that garden. Even though we were at the end of the year, it was still so gorgeous. Oh my goodness, I love the glass orbs. I love that side garden that went up that embankment. Oh, it was just gorgeous. I loved the she shed, the garden room. Oh, it was great. These two shrubs come from the garden of Stana Grant. She lives in Pueblo, Colorado, Zone 5. On the east side of her house is a 19 by 6 garden bed, and this picture shows a center glow 9-bark that she planted in 2020, and she doesn't know the name of the rose because it was there when she moved in. And how many of us have to deal with things that were already there? We work around them and we make them work. I love these two shrubs together. Our question actually comes from Band-Aid 17, and they write that they would like to know how Susan cares for her plants in the basement over the winter and what kind of lighting she uses. I didn't go in the basement, so I didn't get to see her setup. I know she said that she is using grow lights down there and that her basement is absolutely huge and she fills the whole basement with all of those houseplants. I have one itty bitty, like normal sized bedroom in my house that I've converted into an office. It's the only place I have good light, and I shove all mine in there and they all barely fit. So to have a whole basement that you can convert into using for houseplants, oh, what a gift. But weren't her houseplants in that garden room? Oh my God, they were fabulous. We had a lot of people, Terry Paul Oregon, Garden Girl, Studio, Passionata, and Michelle.tlcgiftandgarden, who all wanted to know where she got the glass orbs. And the whole reason I didn't talk about where she got the glass orbs is because you can't get them. They actually came from garden fairs where this one artist made them, and when he was small, he would do garden fairs. But then as he got bigger, he now is in like museums and stuff, and he is like pretty retired, so he doesn't make them anymore. So that's kind of why I didn't talk about them. They were gorgeous though, and so she's been collecting for years. I did a special edition of Garden Gab last Saturday where I went to Aaron's house from the Impatient Gardener just north of Milwaukee. It was a great time. I so enjoyed myself, and I love seeing other people's gardens, especially when they do things that I don't do, so that I learn things. So she had some things in her garden that I've already ordered the seeds for to try out in my garden. Let's answer your questions. Hello, Lana. You're lucky. Your petunias are still going strong. Mine have kind of petered out. This is a super petunia from Proven Winners. It's called Picasso. Now, Lana lives in Nebraska zone 5B, and I plant mine this way too, with like a grass or a spike in the center. This is one of my favorite petunias. It doesn't overtake the pot, but they fill out really super nice. Judy Anderson had a question about whether or not I ever ask any of the garden owners that I visit for cuttings of some of their plants, that would be a good way for them to spread their love to me. I don't know. I feel weird asking people for their plants. I probably should, because most people would probably say yes, but maybe I'll get the guts up to ask somebody. I guess I think that if they wanted to give me one, they would offer, but I don't know. I don't know what the etiquette is on that, but yeah, that is a good way to expand your garden. Becky Grant asked, did anyone catch the brand name of the border spade? They weren't able to understand what we said. So here it is right here. I did put a link below. It is called a Sneebor border spade. Our last video, and this is the one that just came out on Tuesday, was the garden tour crowd planting, no mulch, no weeds. And this garden tour caused a little bit of controversy out there. I am not one that's going to judge what somebody else does in their garden. I love to go to visit other gardens. Everything everybody does is not for me, but I can certainly appreciate what other people do. I'm not a black and white person. I think there's all shades of gray. Do I agree with it, what everybody does? No. But am I going to judge them and tell them what to do in their own garden? No, I'm not. So for those of you that were upset, I'm really sorry. Maybe I shouldn't have shown that garden, but there are all kinds of gardens out there, and not every garden is for every person. So outside of some of the negative comments that we got and some of the concerned comments that we got, I do appreciate all of the feedback. I really do. I try to keep everything on a positive note in, our community. So I would ask that you guys do that too. There were no questions generated. So that is all I have to say about that. So weren't those viewer submission pictures awesome? I love having people send what they're doing in their garden, because we all work so hard in our gardens. And I don't know about you, but I'm always proud of something in my garden. Even when there's things in my garden that don't look so good, there's always something in my garden that does look good. So if you want to get in on the action, what we're doing is you submit a picture to the email address right here. All right, you want to send a landscape format, which means you turn your phone the long ways, because that's the format that YouTube uses to show the pictures. I need to know who you are, what we're looking at, where you live, and what the zone is. If you don't want to give your city, just say Northern Mississippi or something like that. That works too. Then we will share those pictures with people on Garden Gab that we have the first and third Saturdays of the month. Now, as we are winding down in the garden season, there are still videos that I do all year long. All kinds of fun things coming up though. And also, don't forget, if you want to get some bulbs, there's the Shopify store right there. If I load anything else in it, I'll let you know. You'll know when things are coming out. Also, I have a question for you guys. Would you guys want me to do a newsletter? So we've had people that have signed up for the newsletter. on my website, because we do a newsletter for people that live around the garden center. Now, you guys, I started a new list because a lot of the things that I put in that newsletter for people that live around the store really don't pertain to like you that don't live around the garden center. But I thought about generating a different newsletter that would have, you know, tips and techniques and how-tos and just different gardening things in there. Also links if we have specials going on with stuff that's loaded into the Shopify store. So leave your comment below if that's something you'd like to see. It would take some time to generate and do something like that, so I don't want to do it if you don't want it. But if you do want it, it's well worth my time. So let me know. Well, that's all I've got for today, you guys. Thanks for hanging out and gabbing in the garden with me. I hope you get in your garden today. It deserves some TLC. Don't forget, you do too. We'll catch you in the next video. Bye, everybody.